Hardscrabblers. I'm Christopher Klose, Chris Klose, and this is Echo Valley Farm, our home since 1943 with my 5 brothers and sisters and my parents, and welcome. This is a show about how to garden in Red Hook by me. It's my taste, and my first thought is beware of where you are. The environment is critical, the built environment of the house, the trees that are here, because landscapes change. And let me show you this. It's a photo from 1885. These trees, which you now see way overhead, were young trees then, and they're probably 150 years old now because they were sold. They're Norwegian spruce trees. They were sold as people went around and sold them to farms. They were helpful to provide shade, but also as lightning rods. Now come this way through the front gate, and welcome to the farm, which dates from 1745. The first family to found the farm and to own it for many years are the Pulvers, Michael Pulver and his wife Catherine Pulver, and there's a date stone in the basement of 1745. This is not the original house. This portion was built in 1868, and I've maintained the gardens in front. I put them in for my sister's wedding many years ago. They are hosta and native ferns from oil. My philosophy as a gardener is to use as many native plants as possible to do well. So these hosta are from then. The ferns are from the woods and they're along the stream. The Sawkill runs through the farm. So you have to be sensitive to the built environment, as you said, restrained. The sweep of the landscape here is about trees and wide farm fields, rolling hills, the stream itself, and what flowers and perennial plants you might like. So come this way, and we'll take a quick stroll through the built environment. In 1999, the heart of our farm, the barns, burned down. Some of you may recall it. My brother was still alive then, Woody Klose, and we as a family decided that we needed to not put up a metal pole barn, but to find 2 barns and repeat the footprint of the farm as we had known it all of our lives. So here we have our what I call rebuilt environment. The large hay barn came from Phoenicia. It was over in Fleischmann's. It was up on top of a lovely hill. We took it down, numbered everything, took it all down. It was all original, including the sidings and the battens. The roof is not original. It's standing seam metal roof, which is typical of the period, mid-19th century. The barn, which my wife and I have redone as a home, is from Spring Lake. It was a dairy farm, and it was beginning to fall down. My brother spotted it, we loved it, and we saved the beams and the posts. And then that was in 2002. We put in a 3-bedroom apartment in the North Bay here, and I began to think, well, how can we improve the landscape? Because our philosophy as a family, we know we're here as caretakers only, though we've been privileged to be here for 77 years this summer. The idea is to leave the property better than you find it. So at some point, I hope many years from now, we're the 5th generation on the farm as far as children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. But someday, this will be somebody else's property, and we want to leave it better than we found it. So here we are with 2 rebuilt barns, chicken coop down there, and what is typical of Red Hook and the area, of course, were family farms. This family farm was connected to the Teeter farm across the road, to the Heinz farm across our field there adjoining us. But I'm not a farmer. I'm 75. I'm too old to do much of anything except tend to the gardens and figure out where they belong and how to respect the landscape and enjoy. What is most important about gardening is a mix of scents and textures and colors, and I prefer to mass plants for color. And I try to have blooms and flowers most of the year round, which is possible here. Let's start here. This is a stone wall. This stone wall is not original. I laid it out myself, and Randy Bard of the Bard Brothers over on Norton Road did a fabulous job. He and I, we put this together. He's the genius. I started the first 6 foot of it, and he put the rest in. But I garden around it because a wall needs a garden to soften it. These plants here are known as Linton Rose, and they are wonderful evergreens, and they bloom late in February, early March, the earliest blooms possibly around. Then there's a mixture of phlox. You see the white phlox, which the deer got early in the summer, chewed down, but I don't mind that because guess what? The phlox outfox the deer. They come back. Inside the wall we have daylilies that date from when this tree was about 2.5 inches around and survived the fire of the barns in '99. It is now a huge maple tree, a prime tree, and tremendously valuable. We take care of our trees here. Moving right along, I don't want to take your time, but again, we have a mixture of trees. We put in these maple trees along the drive here that you can see. This is a particularly interesting plant here. It's enormous. Didn't know it'd get that big, but that's another tip I've learned as a gardener over the last 50, 60 years is that you can't deny a plant's size. It may be labeled as a dwarf, but they will get as big as they possibly can. So this guy is now probably 2 or 3 times as big as I thought it would ever get. It is a native forsythia. In the early spring, before these leaves come out, these branches are filled with tiny yellow flowers and the most perfect scent for about 2 or 3 days, and it just stops you in your tracks. This is, of course, an old apple tree which we've nurtured and I take care of. It is a smokehouse variety, which Talea Finke has determined, and she's the resident expert on antique apples over at Montgomery Orchard. But every 19th century barn is not complete without air conditioning, because in the Hudson Valley it gets hot and humid, as we all know, but you don't want to look at the air conditioning, so you use masses of, in this case, 2 different types of hydrangea to mask the air conditioning systems that provide that heat the house. So again, we first planted trees, we looked at the neighbors, we looked around what's here. Maple trees, cedar trees. Red Hook is famous for its cedar trees. We have them in the woods everywhere. Not here around the barn particularly. Right there, an example of 2 hardy deer-resistant plants. Joe Pieweed, the tall purple flower there, which you see along the roadsides, and you may have in your gardens. This is a Rudbeckia, a tall sunflower, which is hardy and deer-resistant. The deer don't take it. This is a crabapple. We love crabapples because they provide at least a week of wonderful color in the spring. This is a glorious red crabapple, and here you can see what it does for fall interest. All the blossoms then turn into little berries. And here, because we have barns and we have respect for the farm operations to go around, we have to be very careful about what we do in here. But there are secret gardens in here. You may see the outside of it now. These white flowering vines, that's a paniculata. It's a clematis, and it flowers now in the fall. Remember, I want long masses of color, long in terms of bloom time. And so these fall flowering paniculata are great. This will go on, these masses of flowers, for another week and a half or 2. Daylilies, common daylilies. You can't beat the color of the common roadside daylily. If you want a mass of flowers, I recommend them. These are peonies here, transferred from the north side of the house when my brother put on an addition about 10 years ago, and they are wonderful in the spring. This is a daisy. I picked up, I think it was one of the Hardscrabble days in the past from the Lutheran Church plant sale, and it is phenomenal. It is covered, you can see, beginning back here with little daisy-like flowers all up and down these wonderful stalks. This will last for another month, well into October. Here we have, again, the common black-eyed Susan. They're great, and they come in two different varieties, at least as far as I can tell around here. More Rudbeckia, again, deer resistant, and again, my philosophy here is for masses of color for long periods of time, and the idea of layering a garden so that you have privacy and interest. The scents and the colors are for our birds, our butterflies, our insects, and this whole berm is just a mound of earth there that I planted with plants that mostly are borrowed and dug up and given to me by other gardeners. That's your best source of plants, by the way, and plant information is from other gardeners. It's a wonderful way to meet people and to get to know them, and we have a good back and forth with a lot of people. We're great gardeners all over Red Hook, Tivoli, everywhere. Every garden, in my view, there are two kinds of gardens. And as a novice gardener, perhaps some of you want to plant all sorts of annuals. Annuals are these. These are zinnias. I love zinnias because, again, they are deer resistant. They come in many colors, and they're big, and they're wonderful, and they're long-lasting as cut flowers. And I love flowers around the house and outside and wherever we are, so that I have a constant supply of cut flowers. I also take from the perennials here. You can see there the pink and the white. That's the common phlox that you find everywhere. It spreads. Where you like it, keep it. Where you don't, take it out. Now coming into here, this is the back entrance to our garden here. And the garden is really, in my view, got a great advice many years ago when I started gardening in suburban Washington, D.C., both in the city of Washington and then in Bethesda, Maryland, where we lived for many years. Don't plant in straight rows, said my wife. When I planted my first crop of jonquils in the spring, oh no, they should be saluting. So I followed her wishes, and all I do is follow my nose and make curves. And you've heard the expression, maybe as gardeners, you want to have outside rooms, a spot for all kinds of different activities. We have it here. The first is, excuse me, we have here a variety of plants. This is a red twig dogwood. It's a very lovely plant. It's very modest, but in the winter, this is why you grow it, for winter interest. When this is snowbound here, you'll have all of these stalks that are in brilliant red, and it's a gorgeous winter plant. It has modest flowers in the spring and then does this most of the summer. So I have hosta. I have here, this is Oats Grass, given to me by Loretta Campagna, who was the chairperson of the Red Hook Bicentennial that we celebrated in 2012. She said, and she was a fabulous master gardener, she said, you got to have some of this. And I said, exactly right. We'll put it in front of the barn because oats and barns go together. Here, a little plant I picked up at the Rhinebeck Farmers Market many years ago. One single plant. It's a black currant. It's permaculture. In other words, you can have food and flowers at the same time. And every year this puts out about 2 weeks of extraordinarily wonderful black currants, which you make into jams and jellies and you can eat raw. Wonderful stuff. Again, to fill in, we've got hydrangea, that maple tree, that young maple tree right there. I stuck in about 4 years ago. It was about as big as a fat cigar. And now look, it loves it there. Maples love Red Hook. Here we have, this is called St. John's wort. It's a bush. There are two types. There's a plant, a flower called St. John's wort, and then there's this bush, a semi-woody plant. And it is a glorious deep yellow, covered this whole area in the early summer. So we have a nook there which you can sit in, and this is shade from this barn. So we get a lot of shade in here. This is Acousa Dogwood, which is the last of the flowering dogwoods. Flowers latest of all the dogwoods. There are some spectacular examples in Red Hook Village. On the way in, just past Bin's Auto, on the left, just about 5 houses down, you will see an enormous, beautiful Acousa Dogwood, which I aspire to. This guy is hanging in there. I put this patio in. It's very easy to do stuff by yourself if you take time and you think about it. This patio's been in here about 5 years, 6 years. I just thought, we should have, because there's a lot of shade here, we need a sunny spot for fall, perhaps, or early spring. You want to be in the sun. So I went to Williams, picked up those flagstones and leveled it out and put them in. It's great. And this is the principal sun garden that we have here. Again, it's a mixture of purchased plants, but mostly it's swapping with other gardeners. My sister-in-law, Tibby, was married to Woody, was a fabulous gardener, and she had a whole bunch of Shasta daisies. You can see under there, under that crabapple tree, which I planted a few years ago, the remains of the daisies. And then we have black-eyed Susans, and then we have that whole mass, which is now needing to be deadheaded. And that's another issue for gardeners here in Red Hook. Remember, there are 3 things about gardening here in Red Hook. There are weeds, and then there are more weeds, and then there are more weeds. And so that 3 W's means work, work, work. Mostly, though, working in the spring to prepare the garden, and then in the fall to clean it up. But not this fall, and not last fall, because I took a tip from a wonderful environmentalist who said, don't take down and deadhead and clean out in the fall, because there's all sorts of bird life and insect life and rodents and voles and mice, whatever, who use them as homes. So I said, fine, that's a great idea. And of course we love butterflies, and so there are butterfly cocoons in here of all sorts, and we try to feed them and keep them happy. In the barn here we have a special privilege. This barn has a resident colony of bats, little brown-nosed bats, which are under terrible pressure, as you know, from the white-nosed fungus, which was discovered up north in the state a few years ago and is now decimating bat colonies all over. But we're lucky, and here they are. And we sit here in the patio and we watch them come out at night at deep twilight, and they are wonderful, and there are no mosquitoes. So here we have the secret garden, and here, and to bring it all home in a sense, we have the inner garden. And this whole gardening began, as I said, when we started rebuilding the barn in 2002. It just revealed itself. We are mindful that the built environment is number one, and then you have layering of trees, of bushes, and then flower beds and other things. But here we have, I'm passionate about barns, as my brother Woody was, and we all are. This is the barn that came from Fleischmann's. It fit our old barn that burned down almost perfectly, and it's an iconic farmland structure, which I just think is fabulous. Over here, we have a shade garden, but we lost a big elm tree that I'd planted when my brother died in his honor. It was 35 feet tall. It was doing what I wanted to do, to have a perfect garden, perfect shade garden. All of that are shade-loving plants. But 2 years ago, they got the Dutch elm disease, and my tree man, Craig Kirkella, who's a fabulous arborist, said, let's wait and see if it comes back. It didn't, so it's gone. And let me put this down and tell you what more I'm passionate about. As I said, weeds, but I'm a weeder. And for every garden needs a weeding. This is 20 minutes. This is the best weeding. It's called a scuffle hoe. And you use it like this. It saves your back and it saves the weeds. Let me demonstrate. get one. It's very easy. And you know what it does? It makes an edge. If you're careful, you can just go and make an edge. So any mess of a garden that you see looks about 1,000,000% better if it's all edged. I learned that as a suburbanite many years ago, but here we are in the farm, and it's a miracle to be in Red Hook. And Hardscrabble Day is always the best event of the year in my world, and can't thank everybody enough for joining in on this virtual Hardscrabble. Next year we'll be all together, and come on by the farm. Love to show you the gardens.